This video is brought to you by the No Fear community.
Birger Steen is the CEO of Parallels and contributing author of the No Fear book. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please give us a brief introduction on your background, current position, and what brought about your involvement in the No Fear project.
Well, I think the common denominator for all of us who are part of the project is Pekka. So my involvement with Pekka became my involvement with this book, and that started back when I was working for Microsoft. I spent the last 10 years, I spent 8 of them working for Microsoft in Norway and in Russia and in the United States. And I had the pleasure of collaborating with Pekka for a number of those years. Before coming to Microsoft, I was a consultant. I was working in the media business here in Scandinavia, and I was a .com CEO for a couple of years. And I guess the defining kind of foundational elements of what I've done has been partly that, partly the kind of whole new space of what we used to know back in the early 90s as interactive online services, and now known as everything digital. I've always had, or most of my career had, some kind of attachment to Northern Europe and Eastern Europe and Russia in particular. I've worked with a number of great people, such as Pekka. So I guess that's how I came in touch with the Digital Cowboys originally.
Great. In your contribution to the No Fear book, you had discussed the importance of flattening organizational structures. Yet at Microsoft Russia, both a company and a country which could be perceived as quite hierarchical, how did you achieve this? And what are some best practices you would advise other leaders?
Well, actually, in the book, I think I'm saying almost the opposite, because flat is not actually, the way I see it, a property of the organizational structure. Flat is more of a state of mind that permeates successful organizations, as opposed to necessarily something you see when you look at the organizational chart, the org chart. I remember at some point at Microsoft, we'd have a drive to have everyone have at least 7 direct reports. And if you didn't have 7 direct reports, you had to explain why, and so on. That's not what I mean when I say flat. What I mean when I say flat is that there are very short and transparent communication lines between most people who need to collaborate in order to be successful. And in a modern company, that means most people. So it means that the ability to go and engage the CEO, if that's what you need to do as an individual contributor, is there at all times. That there is a continuous flow of information about what's going on outside the company, with the company's customers and with the company's competitors, and inside the company. So people feel that they're kept informed, that they're part of an organization that they can understand, and where both formal and informal communication, and sometimes also completely irrelevant communication, but nevertheless communication that strengthens the sense of commitment and strengthens the sense of community, can flow freely. So that's what I mean when I say flat, not necessarily an org chart that looks compressed.
The differences between countries and cultures are being broken down. Pekka argues that this is happening within the PlayStation generation, but maybe it's more to do with like today's current age.
If you went back 20 or 30 years, you'd find that most of the globally visible companies and leaders would originate from countries with large populations, because having a large home market was oftentimes a decisive advantage in building business success previously. What happens today is that because new media is breaking down these barriers. Turns out it's everyone, in fact, are becoming a minority. Even if you're Chinese, there's actually 85% of the world's population is not Chinese. If you're American, turns out 95% of the world's population is not American. So regardless of what country you're from, you have to face the reality of being a minority in the worldwide scheme of things.
In the book, you discuss the importance of developing relationships which don't end when employment ends. Can you expand on that further?
The possibility of developing lifetime relationships, as opposed to just relationships that start with the first paycheck and end with the last, I think is one of the big benefits and maybe one of the most profound impacts of social networks on business. Because you can imagine that the community of people that have an interest in your success as a person and as a leader and in your company's success could start developing maybe 10 years before those people actually come to work for you. They could be a partner in business, a vendor, or a customer, maybe even students who are doing work for your company on projects, but not necessarily as employees. And it could extend far behind or beyond their last day at the company if you use modern technology to stay in touch, regardless of where in the world you may be. Now, this really requires that you treat people with respect, that you display a lot of integrity in how you both attract and develop and retain and eventually end your employment relationship with people. But done well, this this really gives you the opportunity to continue working with a much larger group of people than those who are actually on your payroll. Some companies, I think some of the consultancies come to mind, some of the schools come to mind as institutions who practice this by having their alumni network being very much part of their extended support system, have done this well for many years. But with LinkedIn and other forms of social communities that are centered on the work experience, I think now everyone has an opportunity to do this. But again, it's not going to work if you burn people. It's not going to work if people, when they leave your company, are just dying to get out of your reach. And it's not going to work if you treat people well only as long as they take your paycheck. It really means that you have to be genuinely interested and committed to the people in your network as opposed to only in their value as potential employees. But with that, I think this could be perhaps the most valuable feature, if you will, of social technology for business.
What is the most important thing you've learned from the digital cowboys and the PlayStation generation, and how has this changed you as a leader?
Well, I think this is an incredibly good question. And the reason I think it's a good question is the majority of my personal learning as a leader has come from the teams I've been working with. I've had the chance to work for some great managers, and I'm very grateful for what I've learned from them. But if I try to compare the type of feedback and the type of learning that I've gotten from people working for me, that's really the part that has had the most impact in how I have developed as a person and as a leader.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This video is brought to you by the No Fear community.